Okay, welcome everyone to CE 421. This is traffic engineering, CE 421. It's a senior undergraduate class. And the way we're going to do this class is obviously we're going to meet here Tuesday, Thursday for our lecture, 3:10 to 4:30. But then we are also going to have a lab component to the same class, which will be taught by another instructor, Professor Howard, who is a Caltrans engineer, and he basically does traffic operations, traffic engineering for Caltrans for District 5. So he's going to be teaching the lab class, and we'll try to synchronize the class in a lot of ways. So whatever you're going to do in the lab, you're going to see some correlate of that in the lecture, and then whatever we learn in the lecture, we'll try to apply that in the lab. And from a logistics perspective, obviously this is in-person class. We're going to meet here every week. But what I'm also trying to do for the class is that, because I know things happen and sometimes you can't attend the class. So what I'm going to try to do is just kind of record the class via Zoom. And, you know, I tell people that I try to record my class, and people ask me, how do we make sure that people would show up in the class? The way I make sure that people show up in the class is that my quality of the video that I'm going to produce is going to be so poor that you would only watch it if you absolutely have to, right? So if you miss the class for whatever reason, that's when you go back and watch the video of the class. So it's not a substitute for not being in the class. You know, if you ask me a question, I'll try to repeat it, but sometimes I'll forget it. So it won't be captured. The question of the class or somebody in the classroom won't be replicated here in the video. So that's an issue sometimes. I'll try to replicate, try to repeat the question so that it's there on the video, but sometimes I'll forget. Sometimes we'll do some things on the board which will get captured sometimes, but sometimes we'll get cut off and all of that. So again, this is sort of like a makeshift thing for when you absolutely cannot attend the class, but it won't be a good substitute if you basically just start missing classes. You won't be able to capture what we cover in the class via the video. And I don't believe Professor Howard is trying to capture his classes in the lab session. And a lot of times lab work you will be doing a lot of stuff in the lab that will be, you know, going to the field and all of that. So it won't be a great substitute for that. So again, you have an option, a sort of a fallback option via the video, and I'll make sure that, you know, the videos are available to you right after each class. But again, it's not a great substitute for just kind of not showing up to the class. Okay. All right, so I'll not be playing around with this DMK. Okay, so today's class will go over the syllabus. We'll talk a little bit about, you know, what's happening in the profession of traffic engineering. We'll get started on our first sort of lecture slides a little bit, and we'll have some discussions around that. And then we'll see, you know, where we can get, and then we'll sort of get rolling in earnest starting the next class. Okay, so I'm Anurag Pandey, professor of civil engineering. I've been here 15 years. So this is starting my 16th year here at Cal Poly. And 421 was one of the two classes that I taught just as I got to Cal Poly. So this is something that I've taught a few times, although I haven't taught this class in like 5-6 years or so now. So I'm sort of coming back to it. So we are revamping the class. And this class is about working knowledge of sort of road user behavior, traffic characteristics. So then something like, you know, so this is, a lot of this is coming from the catalog. So one thing I want to highlight here is that we're talking about sort of driver behavior, right? But that's not sort of very accurate the way we are setting up this class. We should probably say more like road user behavior, because the users that we want to pay attention to are going to be broader than just the drivers. They're going to involve pedestrians, bicyclists, all of that. So, and this is a lot of those old terminologies still show up because this is from the old catalog and we've never updated that. So just kind of highlight, you know, we're going to be talking about road users more broadly rather than just the drivers of a private automobile. We'll obviously look at traffic characteristics, traffic operations, roadway capacity, level of service, and you know, operational considerations for different facilities, like intersections, like you know, freeway segments, weaving segments, all different types of roadway segments, and so forth. And I think one important thing about this class is that if you do end up taking your licensing exam and you end up doing transportation stuff, there's going to be some problems that show up quite a bit on the PE traffic analysis exam. So I think it's useful from that perspective as well. And if you didn't know it yet, and I know a lot of you are seniors, grad students, that you can actually, if you've passed your FE exam, you can pass your PE exam also while in school. So you don't actually need the experience to actually take the exam. You could take the exam now while you're still in school, even for the PE, the big 8-hour licensing exam. You can take it now, which I think is a good idea if you can fit it in your schedule somehow, because a lot of stuff that you're learning in your senior undergraduate classes is going to show up in that exam. So as some of that content you will see in this class as well. And again, if you're preparing for that exam, if you have some questions around some of those traffic engineering topics, or even sort of broadly afternoon exam, transportation exam, I'm happy to sort of help out with that a little bit. But again, this class does relate quite a bit with that. And again, the prerequisite for this class is CE 321, which is your fundamentals of transportation engineering class that you might have taken. Today it doesn't matter that this is finicky because you have the copy of the syllabus, so you can follow along from there. But I think we'll have to figure out how it can be sort of far away from this table. Already talked about my contact hours. My office is in building 13212, and you should probably try to stop by my office if you can. You're welcome to stop by, whether or not you have any questions. Just sort of say hello. I'll absolutely welcome that. I do have dedicated office hours. Those I sent it out as a sort of an Outlook calendar invite to you guys, so you should probably check that. And those are, I think they are Tuesday, Wednesday. So Tuesday, 12 to 2, and I should probably look up my calendar for this. Let's look at my calendar real quick. Probably don't see it over there. You probably don't see it on the video, but our office hours starting next week. I have Tuesday 1 to 3, so 1:10 to 3, and then on Wednesday 12:10 to 2. So you're welcome to stop by. And then if these times don't work for you, you can absolutely send out an email, or you can set up a time for meeting using the calendar link that's on the syllabus. So yeah, absolutely feel free to set up a time to meet. For Professor Howard, he mentioned that you can always send him an email with CE 421 in the subject line, and you're going to see him for 3 hours per week. So I think you probably won't need to talk to him outside of that, but if you do, just send him an email with 421 in the subject line. His email address is there as well in the syllabus. So absolutely feel free to do that and reach out to him. So getting prepared for 421, whatever we're going to do in the class is going to be via Canvas. So there's going to be a lot of stuff on Canvas that's going to be coming along. And we could start to see that page come up here on the screen. So if you go, and right now you just have sort of the syllabus and traffic engineering elements, but I'm going to keep adding these modules that are going to show up. If I sort of leave student view, you're going to see the big scary mess that's this class page right now. There are a lot of things that are going to be coming up, different things, a whole bunch of stuff, but you don't have to worry about that just yet because it's all, you should be able to access that, by the way. So switch over to the student view right now. So yeah, so everything is in Canvas. You should have access to that. Make sure that you do. If you don't, please let me know. And then, as I said, stop by during office hours, stop by to my office. And obviously, office hours as well, I will have sort of a simultaneous office hours. So during office hours, I'll leave my Zoom on. And I probably should put my Zoom link for the office hours here as well. And I'll put that in here so this is the great thing about having sort of a Zoom link as my, a Google Doc as my syllabus, because then I can add whatever I need to add. So this is your office hour link. Right, so this is your office hour link. So anytime I have scheduled office hours, I'll be online on this link as well. So I'll be in the office in building 13212, but I'll also be online here. So you're welcome to check that out virtually. You can join virtually as well. Okay. All right. Any questions so far, sort of connecting with the faculty who are teaching this class, or any questions about, office hours or anything that comes up? Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and talk about all the other stuff. So good news is that you don't have to buy any textbook for this class. I've basically gone away from the textbook in pretty much all my classes. I don't think you have to buy textbook in any class that I teach now. Even on 321, I've sort of gone away from that. I have an old version of a 321 textbook that I use and just provide it. And then there is anything that's new and different, I just provide the material. So there is some supporting material that will be there. That's one of them is sort of Traffic Engineering Handbook, which we edited in 2016. And this is just a bunch of chapters in there, I think 16 or 17 chapters written by different authors. And there's different content in there. Again, we're not going to use all of that. And then I have Ross and McShane that I used to use in the 4th edition of the Traffic Engineering textbook that I used to use in this class. But again, I don't use that anymore. So you don't actually have to worry about the copies available in the library anymore, because I will just provide whatever you need from that book as screenshot or as PDF files. And I'll not copy it enough that, I run into the fair use question. So you're not going to see a lot of material from those books, maybe just 1 page here, 2 pages there, things like that. So I feel, comfortable sharing that much material with you. And then Highway Capacity Manual, 6th edition. So this is not the most latest edition of the Highway Capacity Manual. HCM7 is. It came out, I think, this year in 2023, January. So it just recently came out, HCM version 7. We are not actually going to use version 7, partly because the older versions, PDF, I'm more free to use. But then more importantly, there is no difference between the content of HCM 6 versus HCM 7 for the portions of the HCM that we are in fact going to use. So they're identical. So the things that we're going to talk about for intersection level of service, or for for weaving segments on freeways, those types of things, that material is identical between HCM version 6 and HCM version 7. So we're going to just use the 6th edition, and I'll make sure that that's available to you guys. Whatever you need, whatever chapters you need from that, are available to you for use anytime that you want to look up. Now, one thing that's about HCM version 7 is that HCM has volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. So volume 1, 2, and 3 are something that you have to purchase from TRB, from Transportation Research Board. And it's quite expensive, text if you want to buy the ebook version, or it's about like, I think $250 or whatever. But again, you don't have to buy it for this class. But HCM also has a version 4, HCM volume 4, which is available for free for anybody. You could just go to this website and register. And this is hcmvolume4.org. So you can go to this website, register for that. And I think I can probably sign in here. So it's free for, please log in. So if I log in, actually you can find all the supplement chapters. You just have to register, and it's free link that you can register for. And then you can, access all these chapter 25 through 38. And the great thing about these chapters is that you can see a lot of example problems that they solve here, right? So obviously you'll need to look up stuff from the actual HCM. You'll need to look that up, but all that you need to look up is going to be provided for this class. But then there are example problems. So the greatest thing about these is like, there are example problems that you could look up and see. Like, for example, there's going to be full example problems, and they will solve it step by step. So you can follow those along. I think for this class, we're just going to use the weaving segments of freeway weaving. So chapter 27 is what we are going to use for the most part. And, you could see again, there are example problems that you could just directly follow along. So level of service for a major weaving segment, the problems given, all the data is given, and then you basically start solving step-by-step problems. Again, very useful for your licensing exam. So you could go and access that, and I'll make sure that it's available to you. And this version is no different than HCM. So if you sort of look at what was in the version 6 that we are trying to use, it just says version 6.0. That's it. That's the only difference. There is no other difference between, for freeway weaving segments, the versions are identical. I think the big difference is between the 2-lane highways, and we are not actually going to cover those chapters in the class. And it's not that two-lane highways are not important. It's just that highway capacity manual is so big and so vast that we can't possibly cover everything. So the idea is that, we cover 1 or 2 chapters of the highway capacity manual, and you get a feel for how do you look up information from that manual. And then obviously if there is a different context of the facility, then you go out and check that out on your own. So again, we're just practicing how to do certain things with the highway capacity manual, with the hope and expectation that once you've done it for a couple of chapters, if you run into a situation where you have to apply highway capacity manual for another context, another facility, you're able to do that in the future. Okay. So again, we are not going to cover everything from the highway capacity manual. We're going to cover a few things. Again, they will be made available to you for this class. And in the future, if you have to look at other stuff, you'd have to do that on your own. Not for the tests in this class or anything like that, but in your future career, either for taking the licensing exam or as a practitioner. And again, these versions keep coming out in a few years. So by the time maybe you're working in a few years, things will be different, and there will be a new version of the manual. So all you need to know is how do we make sense of information that's provided? How do you follow along? Just get some practice along those lines, and you'll be in good shape. Okay. So again, probably sounds like a sort of a marketing slogan, but no textbook purchase is necessary for this class. Okay? That sort of is the big bottom line. Whatever you need, I'll provide. Okay. And then if you want to see what's different, if you're really curious about what's different between HCM version 6 and 7, you can click on this link and read through, and you'll be fine. Okay. So I want you to be sort of participating. If I give you a survey to fill in, make sure that you fill in the survey. I'm not going to grade you based on what you said in the surveys, right? But I'm going to absolutely kind of at least look at your participation. Did you actually participate in the survey or not? So I'll be very interested in you kind of giving me feedback as needed, and just kind of be engaged in the class, submit your work on time. So that has some grade as well. And looking to the grade here, so your lab assignments are going to be 40% of the grade. So you're going to meet with Professor Howard, and then that's going to be 40% of the grade. And then there is tests that you're going to take 3 tests, 10% each. So that's 30% of your grade. There's going to be some quizzes. Some of them could be online on Canvas that you can take on your own time. But then there's going to be some in-class quizzes as well that you could sort of do it quickly. And then some homework. So homework will be homework assignments, or graded homework assignments. I might still give you some problems to solve that I'm not going to grade, but the graded homework will be 15%. Again, there will be a homework corresponding to each test. So I told you, like, there are 3 tests, and then there is going to be 3 big homework problems problem sets that you need to submit. And those will be sort of 15% of your grade. And the way the homework and tests are going to be related is that the test problems are going to be very similar to the homework problem, with a little bit of unfamiliar context thrown in, right? So there might be, just to kind of test your understanding, there might be some things that are a little bit different that we maybe possibly talked about. And the tests and quizzes might include some material from the labs as well. So kind of pay attention in the lab. You're going to be doing group assignments in the lab, but I don't expect you to sort of leave all your group work to 1 or 2 members who might be pulling in a lot of effort. So we don't want that, because obviously your lab grade might suffer, because if you only have 1 or 2 active participants versus all 4 or all 3, whatever the number happens to be in your group. But it's very important that you pay attention in the lab, because some of those questions, some of the concepts that you're going to learn in the lab will show up in the homework, in the tests as well. So just be mindful of that. And because tests will have some sort of, multiple choice, objective answer type questions, right? And but then there's going to be numerical problems as well. So just kind of be prepared for that. And then as I was saying, 5% of the grade will be based on your participation, how much engaged you are in the class. And I see like most people get full points on these 5%. All you need to do is just show up to the class, submit your work mostly on time. So if you miss one and you get late on submitting one homework, that's okay. But if you make this a chronic habit, that will be an issue. And then, if you are sort of missing a lot of classes, then that would be an issue as well. I don't take sort of attendance. So again, because I don't take attendance every class, so if you miss one or two classes, I'm probably not going to notice that, and that's fine. So that's not going to affect anything. But if you start sort of chronically missing a lot of classes, then I'm going to see, okay, I don't even recognize this person anymore. Whatever happened to them, right? So you don't want to be in that situation at all. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. So that way you will miss some points on that participation grade. Okay. So any questions so far on the class, on the grade? Mr. Mine? There are no bad questions. If you have any questions that you're thinking about and you're not sure, yeah, go ahead and ask. I think the only bad questions are the ones you don't ask. So I always prefer you ask questions as needed. So that's great. And then one thing I would say about grading is that, grading is you might think at this point, if you've been in school for 3-4 years and maybe, it's sort of in your head now that, and then maybe high school as well, right? Middle school, high school, the grading is the most important thing. It sort of is, but maybe it isn't either. Like, because at this point, grade is not the most important thing. I can almost certainly tell you that grades matter in high school way more than they matter in college. Your college grade only matters insofar as it reflects the stuff that you've learned, right? So it's way more important for you to kind of learn the material rather than get a good grade. So if you had to pick between two things, learning the material and picking the good grades, you should always, choose learning the material. Now, you might think, yeah, those things are basically correlated, right? And they are. I'm not saying that if you learn the material, you will get bad grades or anything. No, they're almost pretty well correlated stuff, right? So if you learn the material, you will get good grade. But there are situations where learning the material and getting good grades might not sort of align pretty well. And I'll give you an example, right? That example is when you are running out of time on submitting a homework, right? And you basically or you have other things going on and you don't want to submit the homework, or you want to just maybe take somebody else's homework and sort of copy it or whatever, right? So in that case, essentially the choice you're making is basically that, okay, I want to get good grade on this homework. I don't really care about understanding the materials, and that's why I'm copying somebody else's stuff, right? Now, the problem with that is, as I said, grade actually doesn't matter whether you get a B+ or an A- or A. The grade point average, as a professor, I probably shouldn't say this, but nobody cares. Nobody gives it. Yeah, nobody gives anything about that, right? So just never, ever, worry about getting a B+ versus an A-. And I'm not just saying that because I hate to get those emails at the end of the quarter after I submit the grade. I'm not just saying that because of that reason. I can always ignore those emails, and I do. But no, I'll respond to it, but maybe not as earnestly. But anyway, so I'm not just saying that because of that reason. I'm saying that really it doesn't matter. Nobody asks for your GPA once you're a practitioner. What matters is what you can do, what you're able to do. And even in that, practice matters a whole lot than the specific things you're learning, So the idea of sort of college is that, is what you're trying to do here, what's the best use of your time in college is you're training your brain on how to sort of learn stuff, right? You have this 4 years opportunity of figuring out how your brain works, how it learns new stuff that you need to absolutely take care of, either for an exam or for an assignment, for a project, whatever, right? As long as you're training your brain to do that, you'll be fine in the workplace, because that's what workplace is. Like, you just sort of run into different projects, different situations. You got to make sense of information that is provided to you and just complete the project, right? That's what you're trying to do. So think of colleges that way. Maybe it's too late for you because you're graduating this quarter or whatever. But that's the idea of college, right? So you basically never ever want to look at somebody else's work and just copy it over. I am actually fine with you collaborating with each other, you talking to each other on homework problems, because it's only 5% of your grade, each homework is. And if you work with each other, I'm perfectly fine with that. Talk to each other, discuss with each other. The only thing I don't want is just submitting something that you don't understand how you actually got there. So talk to somebody else, learn about how you approach a certain problem, and then submit it. And that's perfectly fine. Collaborating is perfectly fine with me except for the tests. I don't care if you collaborate with anybody else for your homework, for your lab assignments, for your, so all those things are fine, except for in the quizzes and tests. I would make sure that you're not collaborating with each other. But other than that, for learning the material, when the time's time to learn, absolutely just talk to each other, do whatever you have to do to make sure that you are learning the material. And that's the most important thing. And I really sincerely believe that is the case. And it's hard for you to probably see that at this point. But 15 years, and I've been out of college since like 2002. So 21 years out of college, I can absolutely see that, what you learned, how you trained your brain was the most important thing that one had to take out from college. It's not, what grade you got, whether I don't recall any grades in any of my classes other than the one that I barely passed. I'm not going to say which one. It was not transferable. So yeah, other than that, I don't recall grades in any of my classes. And nobody asks me for my grades anymore. And if you talk to any practitioner, that you get comfortable asking, how many times have you thought about or discussed about the grades? But how many times have you thought about the material that you learn in the classroom? That's probably way more common than the grades, right? And even in the material, we try to give you the most relevant material here at Cal Poly, what's going to be relevant as a practitioner. But even that material becomes obsolete like 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. All that you're left with is, did you train your brain to learn new things, right? So that's the most important thing. So never ever question, hey, why is this professor teaching this stuff to me? It's not going to be applicable. Think of this as, okay, it's a training for my brain. So, right? So never question what I'm trying to teach you. That's the bottom line. But again, I hope you got the point of all this discussion. Okay. So about the workload, it's not going to be easy. So it's going to require, this is a 3-unit, it's like, how many units? It's a 4-unit class for you guys, right? 4 quarter units. So yeah, it's going to require, I know the formula says 2 to 3 hours. I don't think it's going to require 2 to 3 hours outside of the class, because you have 3 hours in the lab, and a lot of times you can cover a lot of ground there. So I'm going to say 6 to 7 hours per week should be sufficient outside the class. That's way more than enough time. And if as an individual, you're thinking that, and you're seeing that you're to get good, to do good in this classroom, to get all the material, to get all the practice that you need, if it's taking you longer than that time frame, then yeah, maybe you should talk to me and figure out, what's going on. Maybe you're picking up too much slack from your group, right? So maybe your lab group is such that where you're having to put too much time, or maybe you're not studying right. Maybe you're putting that much time and not doing as well in the test. Then maybe we need to talk about it, right? So make sure that you do that. And so that's something that we need to discuss. But 6 to 7 hours, if you plan for that much time, should be sufficient for you to kind of succeed in this class, getting all you need to get out of this class. So that's something. For homework, I'm okay with little bit. If the work is not in its best possible sort of handwriting or whatever, I can potentially work with that. But make sure that it's legible to somebody reading through it. If they can easily understand it, that's a good thing, because then it's, it saves everybody's time. So just make sure that whatever you're submitting, it's legible for whoever is grading it. And a lot of times I might have graders grading stuff. So it makes it even better if they can understand and sort of match it up with a solution and all that rather easily. So that you don't lose points on that. In-class tests, there will be 3 tests. And none of the tests are cumulative. So you'll have like 3 sort of different modules in the class. And you're going to have 3 tests, each associated with each module. Now, in Cal Poly, we have, I think I gave you. So what I try to do is at the end of the quarter, because I'm going to do that, actually all 3 tests are going to be in the class, right? So they're going to be all done. So there is going to be tests. I have the dates in there as well. So your last 3rd test for the 3rd module will be during the dead week. Now, what I do is in my classes, I give you an opportunity. So none of these individual tests are going to be cumulative. But what I'm going to do is, let's say, if you think you can do better in the cumulative, let's say the test grade you think does not reflect the amount of knowledge, amount of things that you've done in the class, you will have an option to take a final exam during the scheduled final time of the class, right? So there is obviously for 3:10 to 4:30 Tuesday, Thursday class, there is actually scheduled final exam time during the final exams week. So what I'm telling you is that final for you is not required, right? So if you do well in the tests, a non-cumulative test that you're going to have in the class, if you do well in those tests, and you don't think either you do well or for whatever reason you think you can actually improve on whatever you got, you don't have to take the final, right? But if you want to, so if you show up and take the final and you do worse on that, that's okay. I'll still count your old grades that you had, right? So you can't really lose by taking the final, but you don't have to take the final. So there's going to be a cumulative final that happens. But if you don't show up for that, no harm, no foul. I'll just use your test grade. But if you do end up taking it and scoring better than the 3 test average, I'll replace your test grade with that grade. Does that make sense? Right? So yeah, this is something that we do in like almost all my classes. So you'll have that option. And again, the final exam will be very similar to the test you've already taken, but maybe some more unfamiliar context thrown in between homework and tests that you've already taken and so forth. All right. You'll get a letter grade and then plus minus associated with that. Email is the best way to reach me. I'll try to respond within 24 hours about the class. Put in CE 421 as the subject line in there. That's usually a good thing. And I already talked about, cheating and plagiarism, sort of taking somebody else's stuff and presenting that as your own is absolutely not acceptable. And again, as I told you, it's not useful. You're not actually gaining anything by doing that because you're just sort of wasting the opportunity for the grade, which, as I said, in the long run is not worth it. It doesn't matter actually. As long as you're sort of passing the class, if you improve from like a B- to a B+, it doesn't matter. If B to a B- or B to a A-, it doesn't matter. Just try to do your best in the class by putting in the 6 to 7 hours of effort that I talked about, and you will be fine in terms of grades. Grades are not what matters. The amount of material that you learn and then how you learned it, how you sort of trained your brain to learn new material is what's the most important thing. We're going to be doing a lot of submissions on Canvas. So make sure that, you make sure that what you're doing is you submit things on time. You don't wait for last minute, because if you wait till last minute, it's hard for me to sort of take care of things and respond to your email or whatever. So for the most part, if you can, in fact, submit work like before time, that would be a useful thing, a good thing. Because then if you run into some problem with Canvas or any kind of other technology, you will be fine and you could use it. You could do things without without sort of worrying about it last minute. And I can also give you more time. I can accept submissions by email, whatever. So just don't leave things for last minute. And the other problem with leaving things for last minute is that's where you sort of get that idea in your head to sort of maybe copy somebody else's stuff and all that, because you just don't have the time to do it. But try to, as the work gets assigned, try to get it done as early as possible. as you're finding time, don't sort of leave it for the last minute. And usually that's going to be pretty helpful so that you can actually put in the time that you need. Okay, cell phone, make sure that you put your cell phone on silent mode. Don't, again, if it goes off one time, that's fine, but don't make it a habit. Just make sure that it's on the silent mode. Okay. Any questions about about the workings of the class? That's all we've talked about, sort of logistics of the class, right? So we haven't touched on any technical stuff yet. So any questions? Okay. So what we'll do now is like just a little bit about the topics in the class. And those are also on your Canvas page right here. So there are 3 modules, and I have the test dates for each of those modules. The tests are going to take place in the classroom here, and we'll try to. And this is sort of the list of topics we are going to cover. So we're going to do a little bit about introduction to traffic engineering, what traffic engineering is, starting today, a little bit, and then what traffic parameters we need to measure, right? So and then how do we measure them in the field? You're going to start learning about that stuff in the lab as well. The lab happens on Wednesday, so that's going to be on the 27th. And then speed and volume studies, and then how do we use those volume studies and maybe some other types of analysis in signal warrants. How do we sort of use that data to do signal warrants analysis and all the other types of things that we need to do. And then there is some there is some lab studies that are associated with that module. And then for module 2, we'll talk about sort of intersections. That's a big thing where 2 roads meet each other. How do we sort of provide for that? And that's a very complex analysis. And then intersection, whether it's a 4-legged intersection or you're trying to provide like roundabouts, how do we engage in the process or ICE, intersection control evaluation? Again, see, I see a typo. I fix it, and it's done for future. I don't have to worry about it. And that's the link that you see. I mean, I'll obviously not change the grading scheme or anything like that. I don't know that without informing you guys, but I'll try to fix those typos. So, and then module 3 will talk about capacity and level of service analysis. And typically I do this work, and this is going to be mostly for uninterrupted flow, like freeways and stuff like that. Okay, so that's going to be the main thirst of the last module, is looking at freeway segments, looking at weaving segment level of service analysis and all of that. And then we should be able to get the HCS, I said, pending software installed. It looks like we will have the access to a highway capacity software. We'll do some interchange analysis. We'll do some weaving analysis. And now learning about the ICE process is going to be critical, because we'll actually have software. The ICE process also gets used in interchange analysis as well. So that's going to be useful. Once you've learned the ICE process, you'll be able to apply that for the interchanges, design of interchanges too. Yeah, so those are sort of the 3 modules. And again, I have a test date. 12/7 is sort of your date of the last class. So you're going to be taking a test during that day. And every Thursday, we're going to have that test. Okay. Not every Thursday, I'm sorry. These 3 Thursdays is going to have on the test. And we'll spend some time on Tuesday, depending upon how much time we have left over. We'll spend some time on Tuesday sort of going over, just reviewing stuff that we might have learned during the module. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about sort of what traffic engineering is, what are the different and distinct elements of that, and all of that. So what I want to do is I'm just give you a handout, and maybe what you can do is like take one copy and pass the rest along. I don't think I've posted this yet online, but let me sort of go over this. So what I have now is that I've asked you guys to read through this. Ask you guys to read through this. This is traffic engineering. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again. I'm going to go share my full screen. Yeah. So a couple of things here. I have so what I shared with you is the traffic engineering handbook chapter 1. So we're talking about traffic engineering handbook, which is published by ITE, which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And it's a sort of national and international organization, really, of all transportation professionals. And they used to publish this traffic engineering handbook. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in the editing of the 7th edition. And this was published in 2016, but then we started working on it in 2013. And now there is sort of like an online version of the same thing. So they don't have like, because they don't want to publish books anymore. So they have like what they call a traffic wiki. And the idea of traffic wiki is that they can continuously update it as new editions come out, or the highway capacity manual or whatever, they can quickly update stuff. So they've switched to a sort of a wiki model, which is also sort of a wonderful resource. So you basically get all the things that were in the traffic engineering handbook, and you could get it just from their website. Now, the catch is that you have to be a member, okay? You have to be an ITE member to be able to access the traffic wiki. But the good news is that the membership is free for the students. And then after you graduate, it's like $30 a year for like first 5-6 years or something. It's a pretty effective way of actually getting connected to that traffic engineering community. So that sort of is my homework for you guys. If you're not already a member, what you need to do is become an ITE member, ITE National Organization member. That's not the Cal Poly student chapter. We do have a very active chapter. I know Nick is involved with that. You know, Joey, you are as well. So I know some folks who are involved with that pretty heavily. But again, I would very much encourage you to become a member of our student chapter, but then also, which actually costs like, I think $20, $30 per year as a student. But then membership in the national organization is free. You can just become a member, and that gives you access to the traffic engineering wiki, which is sort of the new version of, even better version of the traffic engineering handbook that I just shared with you. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that you guys know about and become an ITE member and get access to the traffic engineering wiki, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful resource. Now, this is sort of also your first assignment. So if you go to your Canvas page, I have for you a week 0 assignment. I'm going to go switch over to student view so you're not looking at all the clutter here. So it's just basically join ITE and then give me a screenshot that you joined ITE. Okay, and then the link to where you can actually join ITE is right here. So you could just kind of click on this link, follow along, just become a member of ITE, get access to all their wonderful resources. And it's free right now. So you don't have, it doesn't cost you anything. So you should absolutely do that for this assignment. And then you have until Tuesday to do that, until coming Tuesday. And that's where you'll get access to that. So one thing I wanted to talk about is, so a lot of this content that I shared with you was written about 10 years ago now, like maybe 9 to 10 years ago. We started working on it in 2013, but maybe we wrote this chapter a little bit later as we were getting ready to publish this stuff. But sort of traffic engineering is about how the surface transportation works and interacts with other modes of transportation, right? So that's what traffic engineering is. So we're dealing with roads, streets, highways, freeways, and then we're not directly talking about air transportation or sea transportation or even railroads. even though railroads are also, quote unquote, surface transportation, but we're not directly addressing those modes in traffic engineering. Okay? So we're not directly addressing those modes here, but we are, just sort of looking at how the surface transportation in general, the cars, the trucks, the bicyclists, the pedestrians, how they interact with, themselves, with each other, but then all these other modes as well. So a lot of our students end up working in a lot of projects that deal with sort of airport traffic, for example, right? How does the ingress and egress happens in and out of the airports, right? So there is a lot of traffic engineering involved there. So to the extent that we talk about other modes, we talk about how our other modes interact with traffic engineering. So we'll talk about, occasionally we'll talk about buses, for example, right? We're not talking public transportation necessarily, but we're talking about how, bus might serve as a design vehicle, for example, for certain streets, right? Things like that. So now traffic engineering is something that has been, it's been a profession since I think at least 1940s, when sort of cars were becoming more and more common in this country and other places as well. And since then, since 1941, when first word edition of the traffic engineering handbook came out, and if you sort of look at the evolution through the 6th edition, the edition right before the one that you're seeing right in front of you, the traffic engineering practice was very, very automobile oriented, right? So we looked at traffic and traffic problem from the view of a driver, right? As if you're driving your car, how can we make your life easier so that you can go fast as you can through streets? And that makes sense on certain facilities, even to this day, right? So, for example, if you're thinking about intercity travel, like a long distance intercity travel, and maybe moving freight, for example, right? So on interstate highway system, right? It actually makes sense for us to be thinking about what's the most efficient way of moving people that still sort of is safe for everybody. So speed for the cars and for the trucks, still sort of an important consideration, travel time, important consideration still. But I think the mistake that we made as a profession, and that was something that, a lot of people were responsible for. Our academia was pretty much oriented in those ways as well. The civil engineering programs, all of that, is that we sort of brought that same philosophy for design and operation of interstate highway even to our city streets. And part of the reason was that we actually brought in the interstate highway systems into our cities as well. And I think that was another sort of long-term sort of planning error. In some ways, you could call it that. And this is kind of interesting if you look at the history of some of the other countries. For example, if you look at Italy, for example, right? So Italy did a pretty, I think, decent job in terms of, they still have their, highways, motorways, whatever they call it there in Europe. Those, whatever the equivalent of interstate highway system is they have that too. But they did not actually bring those inside their cities. They sort of created bypasses if they needed. And we do create those as well. But a lot of times we actually brought in our highways right into our cities. And not only did that sort of messed up a little bit, in terms of neighborhoods and downtowns and all of that, it sort of wasted a lot of real estate there and killed some of the downtowns. And we talk about that in our CE 222 class a little bit. If you've taken that class, we talk a whole thing about divided highways and how that created urban problems and divided rural farms and whatnot. But even beyond that, I think one problem that it created specifically for traffic engineering is that we try to bring in the same design philosophy, the operational philosophy of interstate highway to our city streets as well. So our city arterials, city roads were also same thing, pretty wide. We will assess the level of service in terms of delays to the cars. And that was, I think, a big mistake because, even in downtown, the purpose became how fast you can pass through there. But I think the purpose in downtown should be, how do we make sure that, people want to spend time here, maybe walk around, look at shops, buy some things, have food, whatever, spend as much time as possible. And that creates some safety issues as well, because if you have high-speed traffic interacting with whatever pedestrians or bicyclists you might have, that also is a problem. So I think this handbook, the 7th edition, was sort of the first time when ITE started to think about, maybe we need to think about these things a little bit differently. Instead of sort of thinking of all modes as separate, even in our city streets, maybe we should think about all the things in totality. So this is the first edition where we started thinking about all modes in its totality. And that has sort of become the norm now. If you look at sort of city streets, now we have sort of a ASHTO Green Book for the design of facilities and then we have sort of a parallel book, which is called NACTO, which is sort of National Association for City Transportation Officials. So state highways and transportation officials, that's your ASHTO, and they sort of deal more with the state highways, interstate highways, all those things. But then for city streets now, we have a sort of parallel publication called NACTO. And that is even good because that's pretty good, because now we can think about how all modes can coexist, how we have to make sure that the traffic is moving slowly through our city streets. Maybe we don't need that many wide lanes, and so on and so forth. So, and then we have to think about all modes sort of coexisting. We might be able to separate bicycle traffic in some places, but in some places, bike traffic has to coexist with cars, and then cars have to be slowing down in those places. And the level of service in terms of as measured by the delay for cars cannot be an important criteria, because that would mean that we are trying to move cars as fast as we can. And that works on the highway system, but that doesn't quite work as effectively in our city streets. So that's what this sort of document is sort of trying to talk about, is like, how do we need to evolve our practice, and how do we need to move away for whatever we were doing up until the 6th edition of and the 6th edition, I think, came out in like 2003, 4. So that was sort of a peak automobile in traffic engineering profession. I think by that time, we started realizing as a profession wholesale that we need to probably do things a little bit differently. So that sort of is why I wanted to share this. It talks about what is the definition of traffic engineering and how the practice is evolving. And I would love to maybe get you some feedback or some thoughts that you had as you read through this. So I would love to hear what you thought about what I shared with you here, and then what we just talked about as well. So any thoughts that come to mind, love to hear those from you. Anything anybody wants to? Yes, please.
Earlier for module 1 about signal warrants, and I assume in the scope of this class, we're more focused on the volume metrics rather than the road and crash experience warrant.
So yeah, that's a good question. And then, I have my own issues with so the question was, we're going to look at traffic signal warrants, and traffic signal warrants a lot, volume study, traffic studies. But if you look at the list of traffic signal warrants that are provided by the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the federal version or the California version, you'll see it has 9 different warrants, and then 4 or 5 or 6 of them might be focused on traffic volume or future projected traffic volumes. But there are crash warrants as well. So they depend on traffic safety. So what I'll say is like, yes, we actually are going to cover the traffic signal warrants as they relate to crashes and collision experience of a roadway system. So we're going to actually cover that in this class too, but only because that warrant doesn't capture or doesn't require a deep analysis of collision data. It just kind of requires what's the frequency of crashes, whether or not you've had 5 fatalities or whatever the numbers might be. It doesn't require deep analysis of collision data. Yes.
Sorry for
No. Yeah.
Since you bring up, I guess, about warrant 7 for traffic signal and crash experience.
Yes.
And it would be in this class, we also about to use the MUTC internal approval IA-19, the alternative warrant analysis for crash experience.
We'll definitely look at that. Although we are going to cover sort of the official version of it, so we're going to stick with that. I know there is a newer newer signal warrants are about to come out. They haven't released them yet. So we are, for this purpose of this class, we're going to stick with the federal warrants that are out there. But I'm going to touch on that, and we'll sort of look at critically, what are the big critical differences between the document that you talked about, and I'll be happy to have that discussion in the class, even though we'll sort of stick with the official warrant, and then sort of maybe critiquing those warrants and what are some of the ways of alternative practices. And some of this stuff gets into pretty interesting questions that go beyond engineering as well, right? It gets into the question of public policy. To what extent should cities have to rely on these federal warrants? Can they do something based on their different contexts and how they can apply their context? And this idea of sort of context-sensitive design is this whole new thing that we talk about in our practice. So how far actually can a traffic engineer push that, right? Because there's liability concerns. If you don't do things by the book, you can get sued. So there's going to be some interesting questions that come up that we would love to sort of get into. And those things are probably not going to be something that we'll deal with in sort of numerical problems, but it'll be certainly something interesting to think about conceptually. And, so again, even though for sort of numerical type problems, we stick with the sort of the federal warrants, but we should definitely be engaging in those conversations, and we will be doing. Great question. Right. So traffic safety, the question is, are we going to be covering traffic safety, and to what extent, in what detail? So we actually have a class that we are going to offer next quarter, CE 526, which is on transportation safety. So specifically deals with analysis of collision data, gets pretty deep into what are the ways of measuring safety and all of that. In this class, we'll just sort of stick to the basics of what type of collision data might be required, just sort of basic stuff. So yeah, we'll be looking at just kind of looking at crash counts maybe a little bit. But we absolutely look at, and we'll obviously be looking at what we call nominal safety, right? Nominal safety is whether or not you're meeting certain design standards, whether or not you're meeting the signal warrants, whether or not you're meeting the AASHTO minimum guidelines for providing curve radius and whatnot, right? So those are called nominal safety considerations that we are absolutely going to talk about. We're going to talk about human factors a little bit that relate with safety, but we're not going to dig deep into sort of analysis of collision data and all of that. That comes more in CE 526. Okay, so that's the relationship between CE 421 traffic engineering and CE 526 that's specifically dedicated to safety and crash data analysis. Yes, please.
You did mention that, I guess, that class will be using Synchro, and I know Synchro is very prevalent in field and transportation engineering. And if we wanted to further develop our skills on Synchro, are there any other classes offered at California that also?
We can. So I think Synchro will be pretty heavily used. So you'll get a lot of experience with Synchro. So the question is about Synchro and whether we'll get experience to Synchro enough in this class. So I think you should get enough experience in this class. We do organize sometimes, the IT will organize some workshops and stuff like that too. But we do modeling and simulation class, but we don't, in that class, we focus the CE 529 that's in the spring quarter. We focus more on sort of a little bit more advanced software, which is PTV vSim. So we focus more on that software in that class. But I think we can, so yeah, so there is no other class where you're going to dig deeper into Synchro as much as you will do in this class. But we're hopeful that you'll get enough experience with that. But then again, you'll have access to Synchro in that lab. So if there is interest and things like that, you're welcome to access Synchro in that class. But I don't believe there's any other class where we dig way deeper into Synchro compared to this class. So no other classes that dig deep into Synchro than this class. So yeah, you should probably try to make the most out of your Synchro experience in this class. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop here, make sure that you become IT member, and then just submit the screenshot online. Those are easy points for you. And again, gives you access to Traffic Wiki. I probably should include that as a resource list once you've all become members, and you can confirm that you have access to that. I think that'll be great resource for us to go back to and look at as needed. And yeah, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to reach out. And yeah, best of luck. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop here.